Hi.
Yeah.
Does everyone see me?
Yes, Bante.
I see Bante and everyone else. Good.
Thank you. And then we say, my computer is giving me trouble as I to ask me to install some software. I don't know how to do that. So,
if everyone could remember to mute their microphone when they're not speaking, that would be helpful. It does, whenever there's a loud noise, it will take the focus off of Bante's screen and put it on you. So in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a mute button. So if you just click that, and then if you ever need to speak again or interact with anything, you can just click it and unmute it.
Interesting photo, Corey.
It's from 2011.
I figured.
please, when everyone is ready. Hi, everyone. Do you hear me? Is Corey there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I had to unmute my mic.
Okay. I'm ready to start. Please let me know when everyone is ready.
All right, I just pressed the record button, so I think you can go whenever you're ready.
Okay. So everyone sees me, right? Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because I don't see any one of you because of I have my screen sharing, how to say, fit into the screen. So that's why I don't see anyone else, but I see that there are 21 people of us. Okay, ready, right? 1, 2, 3.
Good morning, Bante. We are all ready.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
So finally, due to coronavirus endemic, we happen to meet online like this. Anyway, things happen for a reason. And then first of all, we must pray that the world will be free from this endemic. So as I have posted on Slack, sorry, but I apologize to you because it was this early morning today that I have to write this syllabus as well as our timetable. And then I already posted syllabus, and thus everyone is now sharing it. And at the same time, I also posted on Slack and Zoom as well the topics or the themes, terms that we're going to discuss for the morning session. And first of all, I would like to just to go through the syllabus. As you know, just like the last course, so this is is 4 credit hours. This course gives you can earn 4 credits from this course. And then, as you know, it was originally mid-February that I was supposed to start the teaching somehow, because I was in Sri Lanka and got ill. I'm in and out of the hospital multiple times. So somehow I must thank Venerable Bhikkhuni for pushing all the dates forward. And so that today the first session. And then, so as you know, this coursework is dedicated to fundamental teachings of Buddhism. And then as you see under course content, that's number one, we're going to discuss the fundamental teachings of Buddhism. There aren't many, but it's going to be multiple terms and concepts that we would discuss. So under these major topics, like first one, as you see under course content, Tilakkhana, 3 characteristics or 3 signata of existence. You might see when you scroll down later on, you will see I have used different terminology as well, but there are multiple standard English terms for these Pali terms. So the first one here, as you see, is Tilakkhana, 3 characteristics or 3 signata of existence. And then Chattari Arya Satchani, that's the 4 noble truth or the 4-fold noble truth. And then the noble 8-fold path, that is Aryo Attangika Magga. And then dependent origination, that is Paticca Samuppada. And then 5 aggregates, and that's about our selfhood, that is Panchakandha in Pali. And then the 12 faculties that would also analyze or explain our selfhood and our existence, empirical existence, that is Dwadasayatana. And then karma, as you know, karma is the Pali word for karma, which is English and Sanskrit, karma or karma and rebirth. And then nibbana or nirvana is emancipation or the salvation as taught in Buddhism. I think learning outcome, I think we don't need to explain that. You can just read that, go through, and then number 3 is recommended readings. Right now, I only recommend what the Buddha taught by Venerable Professor Rahula. Of course, it's available in multiple languages. Originally, it was in English, and it's available in Sinhalese, Chinese, Vietnamese, and different languages. And based on our experience from the last course on the historical background of Buddhism, remember there were so many books recommended for us, and we hardly went through them. Instead, we basically depended on the class notes, the instructor's notes, and we're going to do the same thing here. Even though, as you know, because you academics, some of you are professors and you have lots of education in your life, and you know about syllabi or syllabus. As you know, it is a contact between an instructor and students. So anyway, we are all friends. I'm learning from you and you are learning from me. And so given I wanted to give you a long list of recommended textbooks. Instead, I thought I would only recommend what the Buddha taught by Walpola Rahula. And then actually it is written in a very clear-cut language and in condensed form, but it is a fascinating analysis of all the fundamental teachings of Buddhism. And so that is why I thought we should use what the Buddha taught by Walpola Rahula. I know Toshita or someone else, the last time we talked about that, you shared that also, and it's freely available online as well. And so that please read the whole book in your free time. And then whenever you, for example, say toward the end of this session tomorrow evening, and then so that you may you may read the relevant chapters in Venerable Rahula's What the Buddha Taught, and take some notes as well. because as you know, when we fail the final exam, we might have to put at least one reference. For example, according to Walpola Rahula's What the Buddha Taught, this is what this is, like that. So we'll need to explain. In the meantime, even though there's only one textbook that I recommend by this, which is this one, and then we will update, and then we will just locate academic and how to say peer-reviewed articles, academic essays or articles on fundamental teachings on Buddhism, and you are also welcome to locate them and then share with everyone. And in addition to this textbook by Walpola Rahula, you are welcome to locate and share any how to say trustworthy academic peer-reviewed articles or books or anything online, and feel free to memorize references, and then you can include them in your answers final exam. So any questions about the recommended readings?
No,
Can I
Bante.
proceed then?
I
Okay.
don't think.
Okay. And additional readings, and that I already explained, will be provided during the course if needed. I just want to basically all the midterm and the final exam are going to be based on our discussion and class notes. So that feel free to ask me any questions, because I never want you to terrorize to read so many academic work and books and scholarly articles and essays and books for this course. It has to be, so it's a matter of how to say clear understanding of the fundamental teachings of Buddhism. And then that being said, I think we can skip number 5, role of instructor and students, and then number 6, diversity and ethics, and also the grading criteria. I know last semester everyone did an excellent job in the midterm, and I know it's just another reminder. So remember, for the last course we discussed some major topics actually, and please study them well. And then I also hinted at the fact that whatever we discuss in class would pop up in your final exam, right? So that is going to be like this in this course of this course as well. So the assignment, there'll be no quizzes. So instead there'll be these multiple questions, multiple choice question paper, so that you can choose the correct answer out of 4 possible answers. And then you can also skip number 8, graded assignments. And then let's see, actually, yeah, then number 9, course outline, assignments and lectures, right? You see that there's a bullet and it says midterm test will schedule later, probably Venerable Bhikkhuni, and then we can discuss when the midterm test is going to be. Do you have a say about that right now, Venerable Bhikkhuni? About the midterm? Okay, we can. Hello, yes.
I think she's not on the screen.
Okay.
I'll talk to her later.
We can discuss that later. Okay,
Okay.
sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, see, when we see number 9, course outline, see, I haven't mentioned anything under assignments. I just leave it blank. Because why? Because remember during the last course, I recommended that we write I recommended some homework somehow later I changed my mind and we cancel that. Here also, I'm not going to prescribe, ask you to do any assignments. Instead, from time to time, we will revisit and go back to our discussions, and then we will have more questions. That's another term that we would use. We will have some possible target questions for the final exam. And so that when you prepare for those, provide your own, when you can answer those target questions. So and then that would help you to successfully answer the final exam, which is going to be at the end of June this year. And then for now, we can start today's lesson. So, and as you know, it's from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. I know for sure we will take a break at what time? So now it's 8:48 actually. So I think everyone is in the same time zone, right? Central time?
Yes.
Okay. And then so let's take a break at 10:30 or 10:15. Do you remember when we had the break last session in the morning, during the morning session?
Normally it's about every hour and 15 minutes or so. So if we take a break around 10 o'clock and then...
Okay, and then we can come back around 10:15. Okay. So 15 minutes would be enough, right? Probably because you live in your own place, right? You can have a cup of coffee or tea and use the toilet break and all that because you are joining from the from your own home. So that being said, let's have a break until around at 10 o'clock. Now I posted both on Slack and on Zoom chat box the key topic or term that we're going to discuss. Let's go through them again. See, birth of Buddhism, Tisarana, that is within brackets Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and then Buddhahood / enlightenment, absence of the authority of Guru, and two extremes, Anta, and the middle path, Majjhima Patipada. Now, everyone may remember that during our discussions in the last semester on the historical background of Buddhism, we discussed the historical milieu or the background of Buddhism. As you know, Buddha was born in the 6th century BCE, during which time Indian religion has reached the zenith of philosophical, philosophical inquiry into truth. And then remember the key word that we discussed was Satcha, S-A-C-C-A, Satcha, which is Pali, and then S-A-T-Y-A, Satya, which is Sanskrit, truth. Right? Even today, I mean, throughout the religious history, and if there's one key universal term that every religion would struggle to analyze and prove, it is none other than truth. Truth, which is Satya in Sanskrit, S-A-T-Y-A, and Satcha, S-A-T-C-C-A, Satcha, truth. What is truth? And you may remember that Siddhartha, who was soon to be coronated, who was soon to have his coronation ceremony because his father Suddhodana was too old to rule his kingdom, and then he left his kingdom and his kingship and family, and then he became a wandering monk. And you know the history or the profile or the biography of Siddhartha. And then he left his lay life, calling himself a Satcha Gavesi, S-A-C-C-A, Satcha, G-A-V-E-S-I, Gavesi, or in Sanskrit, S-A-T-Y-A, Satya, and G-A-V-E-S-H-I, Gaveshi. Satya is truth. Gavesi or Gaveshi is a seeker. He became a seeker after truth. And that would be the religious tradition in 6th century BC India. And everyone would, every religion would claim to know the truth or Satya. And every ascetic, every hermit, every wandering monk, any kind of priest or monk or meditator or yogi who would travel or stay in one place in deep meditation would call himself or herself a Satya Gavesi or Satcha Gavesi, a seeker after truth. If you were there and then now you are meeting and you come across such a religious person, and then if you ask him, what are you? And then he would say, well, I'm an hermit, I'm a sage, I'm a priest, I'm a wandering monk, I'm a meditator, I'm a yogi, and I'm an ajivaka, turbaner, and there are different kinds of religious texts. And then they would tell you, well, what do you know, or what do you believe in? What about your teaching, and what are you? And then say, I'm a Satya Gavesi. I'm a seeker after truth. My mission is to find, discover, or rediscover truth. Oh, I do know truth, and nobody else knows truth. I'm the only one knowing the truth. And then I found the truth, and no one else would know the truth. And these would be their answers to your questions. And then so the Siddhartha, in such a religious culture, and Siddhartha himself also called himself Satya Gavesi or Satcha Gavesi. Satya Gavesi or Satcha Gavesi. I'm a seeker after truth. If you were there and then you are now meeting Siddhartha on the road or in the street or somewhere else, and then if you ask, what are you and what are you doing, and are you a monk or a priest, and then so what are you teaching, what are you looking for? And then if he were yet to become enlightened, and then if you met him when he were doing the 6 years of self-mortification, and then he would say, well, I'm seeking truth, I'm a seeker after truth. And then if you met him after his enlightenment, after he had become the Buddha, and then if you ask, what do you teach? And then he would say, I teach the truth. So that is why different religions teach different truths. And then any religion would claim that they are the only one upholding and knowing and teaching and knowing the truth. And they would say, we are the only one. Our religion is the only religion that got the revelation. If it is a theistic religion or God-centered religion or a faith, and then always that religion would claim, well, truth comes from God, from the divine. And then if it is an anthropocentric or a man-centered religion or faith, and then they would say, well, truth comes from within. Truth is enlightened from within. We awaken ourselves to truth, Satya, from within. And then so that in theistic religions or God-centered religions or faith, so that truth always has a connection with the divine or God. whereas Buddhism, being an anthropocentric or man-centered religion or humanistic religion or faith, would claim that truth is realized from within, and it is in your heart, not in the cosmos. It's not a cosmic thing. So it is an individual thing. It is a personal thing. And so Buddhism was born in such a culture. So and then, when I know everyone is familiar with these three terms, this Pali term, Tisarana, Tisarana, Tisarana. So, and then, Buddhists, when you define a Buddhist, a Buddhist is someone who has taken refuge, taken shelter in what is called Tisarana. So that is the definition of a Buddhist. A Buddhist is someone who has taken shelter, or who has taken shelter, who has taken refuge in what is called Tisarana, or one who has Tisarana. Sarana at this point, Ti is three, and in Sanskrit and English is three, or try, and then in Pali, Ti means three, and Sarana is refuge, shelter. And then, as you may have heard or yourself chanted or recited yourself, when you say Buddham Saranam Gacchami, I go to Buddha for refuge, or I take refuge in Buddha. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, I go to Dharma for refuge, or I take refuge in Dharma. And then Sangham Saranam Gacchami, I go to Sangha for refuge, or I take refuge in Sangha. So, and this all about refuge, taking shelter, or going to Tisarana, going to Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha for refuge. Now, and then sometimes in the academia, or sometimes there can be a general questions as to whether Buddha is considered, whether Buddhists place Buddha in, give Buddha a place like that of a god or a divine. No. Buddha is a human being. Now, when it comes to Buddha, he is a human being. And then according to all Buddhist schools, Buddha is necessarily a human being. But sometimes later in the Buddhist history, you come across different concepts of Buddha. Buddha at times being, divine, and then so as him being perpetual, him being never being mortal, and then at times you come back with different Buddhas also in later Buddhist traditions. But whereas in Pali Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhist texts, Buddha is easily identified as a human being and also the historical figure. And then so that in devotional Buddhism, and at times in academic Buddhism too, and then so that Gautama is identified as the historical Buddha, and he's a historical figure who lived in the 6th century BCE, before Common Era. So at the same time, as we discussed during the last course, remember, whenever we describe or imagine or analyze the biography or the life and service of different religious leaders, and then we would always have two approaches. First one is theological approach, and the second is academic / anthropological / historical approach. So in why I say academic, anthropological, historical means all these terms are academic. We use those approaches which are quite opposite of the devotional approach. Remember, we did talk about Jesus. Theologically, Jesus is the Son of God. Historically, anthropologically, and then Jesus was a historical figure, and you identify Jesus as Jesus of Nazareth. So based on his birthplace and the geographical region he was born and lived his life. Likewise in Buddhism too, so that while from a theological approach, in a theological sense, you could say that Buddha is divine. Excuse me. Buddha is divine, or but you come across an intermediate term, Buddha being neither divine nor average human, and then you come across a term from within the Pali text, that is Acharya Manusa. So I think I should locate the chat. Where the chat one is. Okay, I can spell that. A-C-C-A, Acha, R-I-Y-A, Acharya, M-A-N-U-S-S-A, Acharya, A-C-C-A-R-I-Y-A, Acharya, M-A-N-U-S-S-A, Acharya meaning extraordinary. Manusa is human or man, and Buddha is described as a man extraordinary. And you may also remember that we shared the story. Soon after his enlightenment, Buddha was traveling on foot to share his teaching that he has here, right? First, with who would later be called the group of 5 monks, Panchavagya Bhikkhu. And remember, we came across a story of Upaka. One Upaka, Ajivaka. Ajivaka, A-G-I-V-A-K-A, Ajivaka was a kind of religious sect during the Buddha in the 6th century BCE. And Upaka was astonished by the marvelous appearance of this young, radiant personality of Buddha. And then he was very young, very attractive, and then he was very radiant. And then Upaka asked, who are you? Are you a god? Are you a yaka or a demon, powerful demon? Or are you and then are you a god or a divine being? And Buddha said, no, I'm not. Are you a yaka or a yaksha, that is a powerful semi-divine being? And Buddha said, no, I'm not a yaksha either. And then are you Brahma? As you know, you are familiar with the term Brahma, higher god. And Buddha said, no. And then the last question was, are you then a human? Are you then human? Manusa. M-A-N-U-S-S-A, Manusa. Or M-A-N-U-S-Y-A, Manushya in Sanskrit. And Buddha said, I'm not human either. But actually he was human, and he simply said, I am the Buddha, the awakened one, the enlightened one. And then, so that is the only place where we come across that Buddha called himself. Buddha mentioned that he is not human either. But actually, it doesn't mean that he is not non-human. What he meant by that was, and later on he would explain that in different sutras, in different discourses, that the Buddha was a human being, but not an average, is an extraordinary human being. So, and that is the term that you come across, Acharya Manusa, man extraordinary, human being extraordinary, or the extraordinary human being. And then so extraordinary denotes his enlightenment, that he knows something that most people wouldn't. And then man or manusa means he is still a man. So, and then so according to canonical Buddhism, canonical texts, Buddha is essentially a human being. And then we also discussed the term, the meaning of Buddha. And it comes from a Sanskrit root, Buddh, B-U-D-H, B-U-D-H, Buddh, to awaken, to know, to realize, and most fascinatingly, to wake up. And the Buddha means one who has woken up. And woken up from what? Woken up, and later throughout his teachings, it would say that he woke up from his own ignorance. Moha, M-O-H-A, moha, ignorance. So when you wake up, as long as you don't wake up from your own ignorance, you don't have a clear understanding. You don't have a clear comprehension of what you are, your existence, your selfhood. And so that we live ourselves not knowing what we are. Repeat, we live our life as average human beings as long as we are not enlightened. We live our life not knowing what we are, who we are. So, and that's what the unknown. And we don't know what we are. So that is clearly explained by that Pali term moha, M-O-H-A. Moha is delusion. And then a better canonical term is avijja. We will discuss avijja at length in our lesson, in our discussion on dependent origination. That's going to be on April 11th morning. So that, yes, so avijja, A-V-I-J-J-A, avijja, A-V-I-J-J-A, avijja. Avijja is ignorance. In Sanskrit, it's avidya, A-V-I-D-Y-A, A-V-I-D-Y-A, avidya. So avijja, vidya is science actually. A modern day translation of vidya is science. So avidya means not knowing science. Science at this point is the clear understanding of realities. Vidya is clear understanding, clear comprehension of realities. And avidya is absence of such understanding. So that's why then when you become the Buddha means you awaken, you wake up from your own ignorance, moha, avidya. Any questions thus far based on what we have discussed?
No, Bante.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Can
Oh.
you, would you explain that again, avijja?
Yeah, avidya, avijja, A-V-I-J-J-A, avijja. And then, so actually, it is, original term is vijja. And then, so when you, so it's A, R plus vijja. R means not knowing, none. Vijja is knowing. So avijja means not knowing. So meaning delusion. As long as we don't know something and we are ignorant, we remain ignorant of that something. So avijja, another term is ignorance. Now, if you ask me a question about how to say astronomy, because I don't know astronomy. And then if you ask Bante, do you know what astronomy is? And then I would simply say, well, I heard about the term, but I am quite ignorant of astronomy. I don't know what it is. At that point, I have avijja of astronomy because I am not knowing. I don't know what astronomy is. So if I do know, later on, I read a lot and come back to you and say, hey, you know what? Now I'm no longer ignorant of astronomy. I know what it is. And then I would explain. And at that point, I am having vijja of astronomy, meaning I know what astronomy is. So vijja, V-I-J-J-A, vijja is knowing, not being ignorant. And avijja is not knowing or being ignorant. Is that clear? Hello?
Yes, very clear. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Anytime, please interrupt me anytime. Because as I said again, we're going to do this coursework, these sessions, these classes, meeting as simple as possible. Right? I guarantee that I don't put a big burden on you, asking you to read so much and write. So that answer in-depth questions, provide. So that's why it's always going to be targetary teaching. So I'm having a midterm and final exam in my head when I speak, explain each and every term in this course. And then so that toward the end of the coursework, and you will get so the target questions, and then you may provide your answers to those target questions, and so that you will have a, how to say, fascinating final exam. And so what you need actually just to remember these in your own language, right? So that you won't have to happen to remember many Pali terms. So thank you, and interrupt me anytime. And then Buddha, again, meaning one who has woken up. Woken up from what? From ignorance, from moha, from avijja, from ignorance of his own being. And later on in our discussion on samsara, you will learn, and of course we did discuss that. And as long as we would keep running in the samsara, in the cycle, because meaning that we are kind of lost. We don't know a way out. The only way out of the cycle is that we locate ourselves, we position ourselves, and we realize ourselves. Once we know where we are, it doesn't matter where we are in the samsara. And the moment we fully realize ourselves, come to know ourselves fully, and then so that wherever you are, and then you achieve nirvana. So, and Buddha, the term Buddha is always understood in terms of self-realization. That's another term I just wanted to say, self-realization. And then, as you know, as we discussed in the last course as well, nirvana, truth, there's no landscape of truth. There is no landscape of salvation, nirvana, like heaven. And always nirvana is realized within. And then so as a living person, it's a living experience. So when Siddhartha became the Buddha, when he got enlightened, and then he called him, so that he realized the truth. And then truth means, truth is all about self-realization. When you know yourself, you don't have to worry about in your surroundings, because you don't feel insecure anymore. And so that's how we understand the Buddha. And here the next term is Dhamma, and then I use the word Dhamma here, which is the Pali word, but Sanskrit and English term is Dharma. But I always want to, I just want to Pali term be the primary terms, but always we would mention and learn the Sanskrit pronunciation as well. So Dharma here. Now, in theistic or theocentric religions, as you know, truth essentially comes from God. So that's why we call it revelation. according to Old Testament, according to the Old Covenant was such that truth, God gave Moses the truth. And as you know, there's the Old Covenant. So that's what you need, Old Testament in Judaism. And then according to New Testament, and then God revealed truth to Jesus. And Jesus, the one who received revelation from God. So at that point, it's always just a vertical, when it comes to truth, it has a vertical connection to God or a cosmic power in theocentric or God-centered religions. Whereas when it comes to the term Dhamma in Pali, Dharma in Sanskrit and English, it means, Dharma means truth. By the way, did I mention the last time that John Ross Carter, who's a professor, now he's a professor emeritus at Colgate University, and he has written the most detailed book on the term Dhamma. According to him, Dhamma has over 50 meanings. But so at this point, the primary or the fundamental meaning of Dharma is truth. Once again, what is truth? Truth is all about self-realization. Or so permanently stopping, permanently getting rid of ignorance, moha, avijja, of what? Of one's unknown, how to say, of self-existence. So truth is all about self-realization. And then what is Dharma? Dharma is all about our selfhood. So that is why later in Buddhism, there have been ongoing debates on self and no self. Remember, we did talk about that, two different schools. Almost every school of Buddhism or the Buddhist history would debate with other schools as to what truth is. And then so that always Dhamma is the truth. And then so it's all about self-realization. And then they would always debate on self and no self. So I have a self, so do you. And then, but when I become enlightened, one day, hopefully, so then what will happen to myself? My self, quote unquote. Will I lose it? No, I'll be the same person. But I would stop having attachment to my own self. And then I would stop being subjective to my existence. And then my own existence would be non-subjective. Now, right now, whenever I am ill, I would always start describing my illness with I am ill. When I am thirsty, I would say I am thirsty, I am hungry. And then I would then explain my selfhood, my belongings, and then I would further describe, okay, here I am, it's me, and this is mine. And and this explains the subjective nature of our selfhood. And then when it comes to self-realization, when we have, suppose you are now enlightened and I am enlightened, and at that point, I would have a non-subjective approach to my selfhood. And then when I speak with the ordinary people, I would say I am so and so. But in my thought, in my realization, so in my mindset, and then I wouldn't say, when I am hungry, I wouldn't say I am hungry. And then I would always look at hunger not as my hunger, but hunger as a condition which which I am how to say which I surrender to. So at that point, it's not that I am hungry, but there is hunger, and so that there's no attachment to hunger, so that there's no complaint, there's no pain, even if my body would still go through pain. For example, if I am enlightened, then I am hungry, I haven't had food, meal for like a whole day or so, and then my physical body would suffer, and I may get gastritis as well. But when I am not enlightened, I would suffer a lot. Why? Because I have subjective approach to my gastritis or my hunger. But when I am enlightened, and now I would still feel hungry, but there's no complaint against my hunger. There's no attachment to my hunger. And so that I would be able to overcome my physical pain as well. So, and when you come back to the Buddha's biography, and then so he would at time have a severe headache, he would at time have severe back pain, and then so that he would rest and meditate and overcome his pain. And Venerable Ananda or anyone would ask how Buddha was dealing with that, and Buddha would say, there is pain, there is headache, there is back pain. And then Buddha would still smile, and then so that, and he would also get some treatment for his ailment. But he has a different approach. So because why? He is free from self-ignorance. And Dhamma is all about our self-realization. But that is the first meaning. Dhamma is the truth, which is none other than self-realization. That's the meaning number one. And meaning number two is the Buddha's teaching. Now, that the second meaning, Dhamma. There are many meanings. First meaning is truth, which is nothing but our own self-realization, at which we are not ignorant ourselves, our existence, our empirical existence any longer. And then number two, second meaning is the Buddha's teaching. So that is the path actually. So that is the guidance. Dharma is the guide. So that we have access to the Buddha's teaching. Now it is available in book form nowadays, in written form, Dhamma. So at this point, Dharma is the Buddha's teaching. But again, Buddha's teaching is all about ignorance and then self-realization. So when you look at Dharma as the text or the scripture, and the scripture is all about ignorance and how to permanently get rid of ignorance, and as a result you will achieve your salvation, enlightenment. So that's basically and that is the two basic means of Dhamma. Any questions about Dhamma, my description?
No, Bhante.
Okay, thank you. And then Sangha. Now you also come back to the term Sangha. Now Sangha is a well-known term in the West actually, and then both Hindus and Buddhists, even some Jains, use the term Sangha. When a Hindu says, I am going to Sangha, my Sangha today, or even a Western Buddhist is saying that they are now, she's going to meet her or his Sangha today, mean the community. Now, when it's Sangha has two meanings. The first meaning, which is general term, meaning community, Sangha. For example, Maba Sangha, so the community of Maba, or the Buddhist Sangha, Catholic Sangha of our area would say, okay, the Buddhist Sangha in my hometown, Catholic Sangha in my home, Hindu Sangha in my hometown. That means the community of Buddhists, Catholics, or Hindus, whatever. And then, so that the first meaning is Sangha. meaning community. But Buddha attributed a special meaning to Sangha, meaning those who have realized salvation, those who have achieved their enlightenment, or those who are now walking the path to enlightenment. That is called Sangha. But and then you always distinguish between when it comes to the Buddha spiritual community, which is Sangha. Remember, let me remind you that do you remember that we, in our discussion, in our description of the term bhikkhu or bhikshu, we came across two pre-Buddhist definitions of bhikkhu, monk, or bhikkhuni, nun, and one Buddhist definition of bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, monk, nun. Remember, those who beg alms from others is a bhikkhu, and those who wear cut and broken robes made from rags collected from cemeteries is a bhikkhu or bhikshuni, bhikkhu or bhikkhu, bhikkhuni. And then those are the two pre-Buddhist meanings of bhikkhu. And we also came back to another Buddhist definition that Buddha coined, and that means samsare bhayang ikkati iti bhikkhu. Don't worry about that Pali definition. Those who see the danger, dreadful nature of samsara or existence is a bhikkhu. Now that is the Buddhist definition. And now, whenever Buddha addressed his audience was comprised of ordained male bhikkhus, ordained female bhikkhunis, upasakas, we discussed that term, upasaka, upasakas, so that lay, male, and upasikas, upasakas, upasikas, that is lay, female. And those other Buddha's audience would be comprised, congregation would comprise of those four groups. And whenever he addressed the group, and according to Pali Sutras, and he would say bhikkhave, and which is generally translated into English as "oh monks." But actually, is it not only monks? And at that point, whenever he addressed, if there were only monks in his audience, and then bhikkhave would only mean "oh monks." And then if there were only female, and then Buddha would have used the word bhikkhunis. If there are only, his audience was only comprised of lay male, and he would say, or upasakas, or lay followers, or upasikas then. If it's all female, and he would say upasikas. But even when his audience, his congregation was comprised of all these four groups, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas, and upasikas, and he would simply address everyone with one term, bhikkhave. At that point, even though scholars translate bhikkhave as "or monks," actually, given what his audience is, it has to be translated as bhikkhave, or those who see the dreadful nature of samsara, and that would be the meaning. So when it comes to Sangha here, Sangha is understood in terms of enlightenment, in terms of enlightened community, or those who are walking the path to enlightenment. What I was going to say is, in modern times, and then you come across two terms of Sangha, two groups of Sangha. First one is Arya Sangha, Ariya, Arya, or in Sanskrit, Arya. Of course, we did learn these two words, Arya, Ariya, Pali, Ariya, Arya, Pali, Arya, Arya, that is Sanskrit, meaning noble. So Arya Sangha or Arya Sangha is the noble Sangha, as opposed to general Sangha. So, for example, being an individual monk myself, right? Now, whenever my congregants, my followers, when I administer 5 precepts, when I ask them to repeat after me, Sangam Saranang Gacchami, I go to Sangha for refuge, and they would say the thing at that point, even though I am asking my people to repeat after me that formula, Sangam Saranang Gacchami, I take refuge in the Sangha, at that point, they are not they don't mean that he is taking refuge in me, an individual monk. They, in their imagination, their mindset is such, their imagination is such that in their head, and they think about Sangha being the community, unknown, millions of enlightened monks from the past, from the present day world, and yet to come in the future. So that means an unknown number of multiple enlightened individuals that would include even lay people, enlightened lay people, Sangha. So at this point, all these 3 terms, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are to be understood in terms of enlightenment. Buddha being the enlightened one, Dhamma being the path to enlightenment, Sangha being those who have realized, attained their enlightenment, or those who are working on their enlightenment. And then it's clear that you can take refuge in the Buddha because he's the enlightened one. And then for sure, Dhamma is the guide and it guides you through. And then what about the Sangha then? When you meet an individual monk or a bhikkhu or a nun or a bhikshuni, so that at that point, now you have, now you are learning from a monk or a nun. At that point, you know for sure that individual nun or a monk, so that is part of what is called the Sangha. But at that point, whenever you take refuge in the Sangha, and you would not think about individual monks or nuns, you look at Sangha as a community of unknown, known and unknown personalities. And then they must, at the first place, and you will imagine them being enlightened. So, so all these 3 terms, some Buddhists, Western Buddhists with, and then they would still ordinary to use the Buddhist term, Christian term, Trinity, Buddhist Trinity, the 3 things. So that and some call it Trinity of Enlightenment. And then in traditional Buddhist terms, you call the triple gem. Tisarana is the 3 refuges. But in general terms, you call the Tisarana not 3 refuges, you call them triple gem. Gem in terms of your spiritual life, of your spiritual existence. You can, if there is something, you can adorn yourself, you can decorate your physical body, your spiritual body with the precious gems. That would be the triple gem. And then you transform yourself into an enlightened person so that you got that gem and then on you. And then Dharma, the second gem, and then you follow the path, the correct path, so that you have another gem on you. You are bearing the second one. And the third one is Sangha. And then as a follower yourself, and you are now working on your enlightenment, you have achieved some level of enlightenment at that point. And also your spiritual body is decorated, or your spiritual body is beautified. That's the word, beautified with the third gem. So Tisarana, that you take refuge in the triple gem, or the Tisarana 3 refuges means so that you are dedicated to achieving your own enlightenment. Now, in popular Buddhism, you pray, you do prayers, you direct your prayers to Buddha. But actually, according to the canonical sense of taking refuge in the Buddha is that you go to Buddha for refuge means you look at yourself in light of Buddha and see where you are, what your achievement is, the level at which you are standing, and then you make a firm aspiration. That's the word, adhitthana, aspiration, to be like him, to be enlightened like the Buddha. And then whenever you read the Dharma, your only motivation is to guide yourself through. And whenever you read the biographies of enlightened monks and nuns, your only motivation is to become one of them. So it's all about self-realization. Any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. And then second one is absence of the authority of Guru. Absence of the authority of Guru. You may remember that we did talk about the fact that Buddha was born into very rich Guru culture. And then so that if we go back to the 6th century BCE and now watching a group of monks, ascetics, sages, yogis, wandering monks debating with each other and arguing with each other, debating with each other. So that argument, spiritual argument or spiritual debate was one of the salient characteristics of how to say Guru personality, especially during the Buddha's time. And then so that Buddha refused. When Buddha was asked in different places multiple times by different people, multiple people, whether Buddha had a guru, and then he said, the first question was, are you a guru? And Buddha said, no, I am not a guru. And then who is your guru? And then I don't have a guru. He himself isn't a guru, and he did not have a guru. And then when he was asked a secondary question, but you must have learned from something. And then he said, okay, I realized something, I know something. And so the meaning, somebody might have told you, otherwise how would you know what you claim to know? And he said, no, I realized something that is called Dharma, and Dharma is my guru. And then so that so he defined himself in terms of what he knows, in terms of his knowledge. And then but one thing was, and then Buddha, and then people, and he opened up and Buddha gave an ample opportunity to them to question what he knows, and then he would explain what he knows. When he explains what he knows, when it makes sense, and then the very person who asked that question, whether he was a guru or whether he has a guru, whether he was a guru or whether he had a guru, and they would simply say, okay, based on what you have explained to me, explained to us, we know that you are an excellent guru. And then Buddha would simply smile. So that otherwise he never claimed himself to be a guru. And then he said he didn't have a guru, and he himself wasn't a guru. And then every time he said, okay, what I know, which is Dharma, is my guru. And then so he refused to accept an authority of guru upon himself. And then so why did and that attracted many followers. Remember when he was, how many years did he strive for his enlightenment? 6 years, right? 6 years of self-mortification. And later on we will explain the two extremes. Actually, we'll soon start discussing that. So that and one story was that when he was during the first few months of his life as a wandering monk, as a Satchagavesi, as a seeker after truth, or truth seeker, and then he happened to join a guru, Sanjaya by name. And then he had a huge congregation, he had lots of followers. And then he attended his teachings and then later realized that he had nothing to learn. And then, so then he suggested, he never wanted Siddhartha to leave his class or his audience, his congregation. And then he suggested that that Gautama or Siddhartha, and then he said to him, well, okay, Siddhartha, I will split my congregation, my following, and then, okay, you rule, you teach one group, I will teach the other one. So I will be the guru for one group and you will be the guru for the other group. And Siddhartha simply smiled and said, my motivation, my purpose is not becoming a guru, because I myself am a student, I myself am a seeker. And so that to much bewilderment, much astonishment of Sanjaya, and that he said that, and he left the group, and he never wanted to lead the group. And then later, when his lay Siddhartha, when Yasodhara's, his brother, who would later get ordained as monk Devadatta by name. You know, he was Buddha's enemy. He tried many times to kill him. Now, when Devadatta split, slandered to the Sangha against the Buddha, and thereby splitting the Sangha into two groups, Devadatta got the bigger group, Buddha got the smaller group. And then Devadatta wanted to lead the group, and he was so happy that he had now become a guru. And Venerable Ananda or someone approached Buddha and asked that whether Buddha had the say, and Buddha said, and then I think the question, as far as I remember, the question was this: Buddha, my Lord, and now Devadatta has split the Sangha, and he has the bigger group, and he is leading the bigger group now. And Buddha simply smiles, I have no concern about that. Because why? Then Venerable Ananda would ask, well, my purpose is not to lead the group. My purpose is not to become a guru. I simply teach what I know. So, and then you may come across, going back to one another Dhamma again. I remember when when in the description of Dhamma, you come across Ehi Passiko, E-H-I, Ehi, P-A-S-S-I-K-O, Passiko. Ehi, come, Passiko, and see. And Buddha explained his Dharma being, his teaching as come and see, not come and believe, not come and believe. And so that meaning, anyone could approach the Buddha and ask him to explain or describe what he knows, and Buddha would describe then. And those who are now asking, listening to Buddha, have total freedom, perfect freedom, free will, just to reject Buddha's idea and walk away. And it is not come and see, it is not come and believe, it is come and see. So the Buddhist, the Pali canonical definition of Dhamma, which is come and see, corresponds to the Buddha's rejection of authority as a guru. And you can come and see, meaning see what I know, what I teach, and it is up to you to accept or reject. So that is how he rejected the authority of guru. And now we have 15 more minutes. And any questions? No, I guess, right? Okay. Now the two extremes, and you come across these two extremes of anta, A-N-T-A, anta. Anta, which is both Pali and Sanskrit, and it also occurs in many different Indian languages, meaning extreme. Now, when you look at the Indian religious history, and you don't come across how to say, what is called middle path or Majjhima Patipada in pre-Buddhist religious scripture. It is only in Buddha's, in the Buddhist scripture that you come across this term middle path or Majjhima Patipada. And then, why Buddha chose, you already know the story of Majjhima Patipada. Now, there were any religion, any pre-Buddhist religion or faith before 6th century BC, before the birth of Siddhartha, would promote either self-mortification or self-indulgence. They were the two religious extremes, self-mortification and self-indulgence. So self-mortification is the belief that by torturing yourself, meaning torturing your physical body and giving your body, yourself, the maximum hardships possible, you can remove all your defilements, all your kleshas, all your defilements, all your sins, and so that you would achieve salvation. Now, and the Pali word is Attha Kilamatanu Yoga. Let me spell. And you already learned that during the class, but anyway, I must tell you once again that term. ATTA, 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 KILAMATANU Kilamatanu, YOGA, yoga. You know the word yoga now. Atta, 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 and Kilamatanu, 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 another word, yoga. Yoga means to engage in, to immerse in, to engage in yoga. Yoga literally means to engage in. Nowadays, you know, when you practice yoga means you fully engage your physical body. If it is physical yoga, if it is meditational yoga, you fully involve your mind. That's called yoga. Means Atta means Atma, Sanskrit word. Atta means self. Kilamata. Kilamata means to faint, to pass out. Kilamata literally means to to faint, to pass out. You know, when you are thirsty, hungry, when you are in shock, you faint, you pass out. And like that, likewise, in spiritual practice too, you are so dedicated to achieving your salvation that you don't care that that your physical body becomes fragile, lack of nutrition, and you even may lose your thinking ability to think and reasoning. But still, you are so dedicated. Whatever happens to you, even if you die, and then you are still dedicated to achieving your salvation by torturing your physical body, by giving your physical body as much hardship and suffering as possible. That's called Atta Kilamatanu Yoga. Anu Yoga. Anu Yoga means to engage in. So Atta Kilamatanu Yoga is self-mortification. So you mortify yourself. You mortify yourself. So that was the more popular, how to say, religious, extreme of religious practice. Now, Siddhartha, being a king, never wanted to try the other one. The other one was self-indulgence. That is Kama Sukhalli Kanu Yoga. Kama, Kama, that is Kama like in carnal knowledge, and Kama is desire, craving. Kama Sukhalli. Sukhalli, Sukhalli, meaning engage yourself in comfort. Anuyoga, and that practice. So the practice of engaging yourself in comfort, or giving your body as much comfort as possible. That is called Kama Sukhalli Kana Yoga. Kama, Kama, Sukkha, Sukhalli, Kama Sukhalli Kanu Yoga. So that is, you don't have to remember the Pali term, as long as you remember, maybe in your midterm or in your final exam, there are two extremes that Buddha asks us to avoid. If we want to achieve salvation or nirvana, that is self-belief of practice of self-mortification and practice of self-indulgence. So any questions about the analysis, I mean definition? No, right? Okay. Now, these are the two answers. So Siddhartha never wanted to try the practice of self-indulgence. And you know the reason. You know the reason. Why? Anybody may respond? I know for sure you are no, but I just feel like you are having there, right? Why Siddhartha never wanted to try practice of self-indulgence. He went into practice of self-mortification right away. Why didn't he try the other one? He never wanted. He never wanted to practice self-indulgence, or to give his body as much comfort as possible as an ascetic. And he didn't believe in that. Do you know why? Because he was a king. As a king, he had all worldly comfort. He had a comfort, a king. King would have the best comfort, all the best luxuries in his life. So that he was fed up with, life in sensual knowledge, sensual comfort. So that's why he left his royal comfort and became a king. And for sure, so that he never wanted to try the extreme or the practice of self-indulgence. That's why he went into his experience of self-indulgence was so vast, so deep, that he was dedicated to enlighten himself, achieve his enlightenment only by the practice of self-mortification. But how many years did he try? 6 years. 6 years. But later on, he made some friends. And then when he was an ascetic, striving for his enlightenment, he met a group of 5 ascetics, and who would later become his first group of disciples. And they were so impressed with Siddhartha's dedication to practicing self-mortification that he attended. He started ministering to him. They became his followers. But later on, after 6 years of struggle for enlightenment, when Siddhartha decided that the practice of self-mortification wouldn't be able to help him either, then he left both extremes. Of course, he left the first extreme when he was a king. And then 6 years later, he understood that extreme asceticism wouldn't help one achieve one's enlightenment. And based on that also, and then Buddhism, when it comes to Buddhist patipada. You know, see that word patipada, which is the Pali term for middle path. Actually, even though middle path, patipada is generally translated as path, but actually patipada means practice. The practice, so the middle practice, the middle path. So, and then he decided. What he did was, and then now he was fed up with self-mortification. That's when he decided to adopt a moderate asceticism, not an extreme asceticism. So he wanted to adopt switch to a moderate asceticism. So that's why he stood up. He woke up from his meditation, and then so that he started looking for some food. And that is when those 5 friends, who would later become his first group of disciples, monks, started insulting Siddhartha. Hey, you know what, Gautama? I think you are an utter failure. 6 years later, you are giving up. So you don't deserve enlightenment. And Buddha didn't say a word. And then he would then adopt what is called a path, an intermediate path, intermediate spiritual path. Intermediate is between self-indulgence and self-mortification. And at that point, and in his first sermon, Dhamma Chakkappavattana Sutta, and then he says, he asks his audience, his followers, "O bhikkhus, you may avoid the two extremes and adopt what is called the middle path." That is how he started his first sermon too. And his first sermon, the opening statement that he made during his first sermon after his enlightenment, was all about the avoidance of two extremes, two antas. And that is when for the first time in the Buddhist Indian religious history, you come across this term middle path. I think it's 10 o'clock. Let's take a 15-minute break.
All right. So, Bhante, do you have the chat window open?
That's why I think, let me see. I see you.
All right, it is going.
Okay. Thank you for helping me. Now I have 2 boxes open, screen sharing and chat box. Okay. And then I think you see me, right? You hear and you see me.
Yeah, we hear you, we see your screen, and you
Okay.
have chat box. I call that a win.
Okay, thank you. By the way, now that I can type at the same time, do any one of you want me to type in any terms, Pali, Sanskrit terms that you think that you couldn't jot down?
I think, just me personally, I think if like the Pali words that you have been spelling out, that Tashi has actually been typing out as you spell them in the chat, would be fine.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to spend a whole lot of time on translating everything.
Okay.
But,
yeah, thank you. Thank you, so Corey and Toshita. So that's why, anyway, I just, before my break, I just typed in Atta Kilamatana Yoga and Kama Sukha Lekanu Yoga, those 2 terms. And then, yes, where were we? So we were explaining 2 extremes, Majjhima, Patipada. Now, again, Patipada, Patipada literally means a practice. So the general translation is so path, actually, because at times you come across the practice of the path. Patipada is practice, Patipada is the path, or Patipada is practice of the path. You could so you could say that either way. Now, Now, when it comes to how to say the Buddha's teaching being humanism, right? Overall, through this, let me remind you that when we touch upon the birth of Buddhism, right? It was Buddhism appeared in a society where the only access point to truth was the religious authority or the guru. Now, you may remember that the earliest form of Hinduism was Brahminism. Remember, we discussed. I did mention multiple times that that during this course on fundamental teachings of Buddhism, we would have to refer back to the historical our discussions on the historical background of Buddhism. Remember, we talked about four ages, 4 periods of Vedic, Hindu religion. Now, at the beginning, there wasn't a term called Hinduism, and it was, as you know, is Brahminism. So that this is the Vedic religion. There are 4 Vedas, and then we don't need to go through the list again. And the earliest form of Hinduism called Vedism, because it was based on the Vedas, and the Vedas are the divine revelation. Like in Christianity and Judaism, that's the revelation. So Vedas were all about, the earliest form of Hinduism was such that there will be hymns or prayers directed at Brahman. And then, so it was based on the earliest period of the Vedic period, and during that period, and the priests would be the only authority over the scripture, Hindu scripture. And then you know the Hindu story of Genesis, right? How he created man, and then the Indian caste system, as you may remember, is based on the Hindu idea of Brahman, right? So the Brahma created Brahmins or priests from his mouth, out of his mouth, and then so that's why they were vested with the authority over the religious scripture or over to the revelation. And then so when what happens was, and then for the next few centuries, the first Vedism would stay the same, and then centuries later, and then so the Hindu religion started going through another turning point. That was the second period of Hindu religion. That was Brahmanas, as you remember, because as people started questioning, and then so the Brahminical authority had to write commentaries to Vedic teachings, and that marked the second. That was the starting of the second period of Hindu religion, Brahmana, so the commentarial period. First, the scriptural period, the period of the Holy Scripture, the Vedas, and second period was the commentarial period, during which Brahminical authority had to write commentaries to the Vedic teachings, because there was at times opposition, at times dissent, at times utter questioning from the followers. The second one, and that they would still maintain their authority during the Brahminical period as well. The real turning point started during the third period, Aranyaka period, forest dwellers, period of forest dwelling, right? And then the Brahminical priest or the priestly authority, that they would a village life, in modern day terms, like an urban life, as opposed to forest dwelling, forest life. And so that some of them started splitting away from the authority because they were not happy with the continued practice of hymns directed at Brahman. And so that they wanted how to say, self-investigation. They wanted to try truth on a human level. That's why some of them started splitting away from the mainstream Brahminical authority, of which everyone was a priest. Every Brahmin is supposed to be a priest by birth. And that's when they went to the forest, right? And then in search of truth, they became Satya Gaveshis. And that's when, and that marked the start of, another turning point, Aranyaka period, or the period of forest dwellers. And they would live their community life with the community, and then they would isolate themselves deep in the forest, not in groups but as individuals, and they would based on what they had learned from the Veda, and they would try their best to experience Brahman, experience God, experience the divine from within, in their heart. And they would go deep into deep meditation. And so that, but that doesn't mean that the Vedic and the Vedic and the commentarial periods were completely gone, and they were still there. And all these periods we talk about in terms of transformation. While so the second period of which is commentarial period, so it marks another turning point. But that doesn't mean that the completely Vedic period was transformed into commentarial period. No. And even to this date, and you would see, especially in Kashmir and in northern India, you would still see the Vedic remnants of, or the Vedic remnants of, or meaning the earliest form of Hinduism. And in some areas, you would see the remnants of commentarial period, of which you come across Brahminical intellectuals who would continue to translate and interpret the Vedas. So going back to the period of forest dwellers, it was not everyone, but some who wanted to experience the truth by themselves. They would go into deep forest and they would meditate, and that would that practice would last like a few centuries. And then what happens? There's no clear historical timeline between these periods. While the earliest form of Hindu religion still lasted, still in place, and then the other turning points, the set turning points would mark the emergence of the other periods of other eras or periods with the same religion. Now, centuries later, and they would spend extended periods of time, like decades, centuries, deep in the forest, and then and they would start coming out of the forest, and they would start getting back in the community. By the time they got back in the community and started teachings, and people, maybe few generations, and then later maybe, and then they would, whatever the generation now listening to these enlightened or awakened Brahmins, quote unquote, and they would find those forest dwellers' teachings very different than the teachings in the Veda, and then also the teachings in the commentarial texts, like commentaries. And because the followers would give sense that these forest dwellers were now teaching, had actually realized the truth, not from the scriptures, but through their own spiritual experience. and that was the third one. So that the period of forest dwellers. And it was actually because of this turning point that marked the emergence of forest dwellers Hinduism, that the Indian religious history saw that the Guru culture was now losing its, how to say, status. Because the forest dwellers would be individual ascetics or monks teaching their own, sharing their own experience with people. So for the first time in the Vedic Indian religious history, and you see individual authorities rather than one big authority mandated by the scripture. And there will be individual gurus, individual enlightened teachers, quote unquote, teaching the same truth, but in different ways, from different approaches. But still, the guru, the status authority of guru would still remain. Now, it would be vested in different teachers rather than one big uniformed Brahminical authority. And then you come back to the third, fourth and last period of the Upanishads, right? And then what happens was the forest dwellers who came out, who were back in the community, who are now coming back in the community and they started wandering around and teaching what they had experienced. And soon they would form their own followers, own groups. And then people would attend those gurus individually or in groups, in cliques, and then sit closer and then learn from those enlightened gurus. And that's called Upanishad. And you know that term, you learn that, right? Upanishad. Upa is close to, and Nishad is seated or sitting. Sitting close to. And you may remember that Buddha also borrowed the same word. What is that? Upanishad. Upasaka, right? I think I explained that word. Buddha borrowed, he coined another term but based on this in this term, right? So, Upasaka, right? Upa, close to, and Asaka, one who sits. Upa Asaka. See the connection, the correlation. See the connection between Upanishad, sitting close to, and Upasaka, sitting close to. And we did discuss that during the last course. And now Buddha was impressed, and it was toward the end of this Upanishadic period, meaning the period during which people would have a closer access to teachers. One big difference, I mean, the biggest difference between the Vedic period and Upanishadic period was that during the Vedic period, there was no room for questioning the priestly authority. Whereas by the time Hinduism was transformed into Upanishadic, kind of, how to say, setup, and then during the Upanishadic setup, and then followers could question their gurus, because in Upanishad, though sitting close to, it was more like a dialogue rather than a sermon. There were no hymns, there were hardly sermons, and there were dialogues. There were discussions. Of course, there could be vada, meaning debate, or there could have been samvada, dialogue. So during the Upanishad, so the Upanishad period could also be called the period of dialogues. And then so toward the end of the Upanishad period, Siddhartha was born. And then Siddhartha borrowed, as we discussed during the last one, Siddhartha borrowed lots of terms from his contemporary religion, that is the mainstream Brahmanism, Hinduism, however you call it, whatsoever, whichever we call it. And then so that is when Buddha went further. He went further, and then he removed his status as a guru, and dialogue continued. And then the Pali word for dialogue is Sakacha. Sakacha is the Pali word for dialogue. And you also come across this, the nature of Buddha's teachings. And he would say, and Buddha's statement, Sakachayam Bhikkhave Anya Vedi Tabbo. Sakachayam Bhikkhave Panya Vedi Tabbo. Meaning, so the dialogue, sorry about my slow typing. I never learned the proper professional typing. A lot of guru teachers try to teach me, no, this guy would never learn. The meaning is dialogue takes you to wisdom. Panya is wisdom. So, and then in order for actual acquisition of wisdom, in other words, if you really want to know what wisdom is, what truth is, there should be any imposition of conditions from the side of your guru. Then at that point, and then you will have no free will to question. You will have no freedom to question. So that's what Buddha removed, and that's why he rejected. He refused to identify himself as the guru or an authority over his teachings. And so, and then always the dialogue was two-way. And then another characteristic of Buddha's dialogue was, as I mentioned before the break, it is not come and believe. It's come and see. If you see, if you know that it makes sense, then you may or still may not accept, or you can totally reject. And then you come across lots of teachings in, say, which one is Digha Nikaya, or this long length sayings. You come across intellectual debates that Brahmins, especially Brahmins, had with the Buddha. And then, unlike in many other teachings in Okay, that's okay. Thank you for asking. Now, let's call Ehi. Ehi Pasiko. Come and see. Right? Ehi Pasika. Ehi is to come. Pasika means who sees. Pasika. You become a pasika means you become a seer. You become a you come and see for yourself. That's what ehipasiko means. You come and see for yourself. And at that point, and Buddha had the different. There's another characteristic of his teaching dialogue. That is to say, mutual listening. That's another characteristic. So when it comes to the Buddha's, how Buddha removed his guru to prove that Buddha rejected to identify, to accept himself as a guru or the authority, first thing was he said that he never wanted people to come and see, come and believe. Instead, people must come and see for them, listen and come and see themselves. And second characteristic was that, and Buddha would, so mutual listening, meaning now still in Upanishadic period, and then teachers, gurus gave so that they could learn from the gurus. People could learn from the gurus, but there was much less. Still, there was much less freedom for questioning. And then you come across in Digha Nikaya, in dialogues, sutras based on dialogues, or teachings based on dialogues. At times, those who are in the Buddha's audience would talk much longer. And at times, Buddha wouldn't speak at all. Instead, he would keep listening to his audience. At that point, Buddha is the audience. For example, audience means those who listen, right? And so that's another characteristic of Buddha's dialogues. Mutual listening must be there. Meaning, if you are my audience, you could go to the extent that you could say, okay, what you have explained thus far is totally wrong. I can't accept that. Then I wouldn't ask you why you are not willing to accept what I have told. Instead, and then I would simply smile and say, okay, it's up to you. And that would be the way Buddha would respond. Now, so that is about guru. And any questions? Any questions? Any terms that I miss?
Yes, I do have a question, Bante.
Okay, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, you shared a screen, and you mentioned that you have a screen that you are typing those letter, and I don't see the letter that you are typing, but I see the screen that it is the more or less like syllabus.
As the syllabus. Actually, in the syllabus, I only mentioned the key terms, because these terms that I have just mentioned, actually, they just popped up in between. Otherwise, the only term that I have given in the syllabus is these ones. Right?
Did you mention that you take the? Did you mention that you take the opportunity during the break in order to type something?
Actually, yeah. In case you wanted, yeah. Actually, I did type only two terms, Kama Sukha, yeah, Kama Yoga, because the terms were too long, right?
Okay. The reason I'm asking here is that I didn't see it appearing. That's why I'm asking. Otherwise,
I see. Right. Okay. And
If I
still,
may,
please.
Mr. Wong, I believe you're missing the chat window that he's typing in.
So, okay, give me, I will copy and paste.
Just
And
go to the bottom of the screen, Mr. Wong, and there's a box in the middle that says chat.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. I see it now. Thank you.
okay, right.
Welcome.
Well, I had the same problem. Okay, these are the two terms that I typed in during the break. Attakilamatana yoga, practice of self-mortification, and Kamasukhallikana yoga, practice of self-indulgence. So those are the two standard canonical terms that describe the two antas or extremes. Right? And then now, so that's how back in the Buddha's status of guru, just to repeat, and he refused to accept himself to be a guru, and he completely rejected that he has the authority over what he knows, and so that he granted full how to say, I wouldn't say permission, how to say, he granted full freedom to his audience to ask his questions, and so for the sake of dialogue, sakacha, because otherwise when a discussion, even if how to say, even in a dialogue, a guru could be kind of dominating, and Buddha rejected that too. For example, whenever people ask him questions, Buddha never countered them. Instead, Buddha would ask them to further describe, or he would simply appreciate, and he would simply ask why they would say so. And then Buddha never wanted to say that is wrong and this is what I am saying. And Buddha would simply respond by repeating his ideas. So that's why I call the mutual listening, and no religious authority whatsoever. And then, so that's about, because another thing is why the importance of, even some Buddhists have asked me why Buddha asked to avoid, by asking people, followers, to completely avoid the two extremes, so that did Buddha mean that we completely not think about those two extremes? And the answer is no, because in order to understand the value of the middle, or the value of the middle path, you also need to have a sense of some understanding of those two extremes are religious extremes are. Now, it is not simply, it is a matter of degree of practice. For example, now, try say, now you have street, how to say, food is not your concern, because you need to overcome your food craving for food. If you believe that complete stop of how to say, or that if you believe that you are not supposed to, that if you try your best to do fasting, and every time possible you stop eating and avoid eating, and then you may get a problem, nutrition problem, right? And so that I have come across some Buddhists, and they practice a kind of self-mortification, and as a result, doctors have advised them that they must have a moderate eating habit, food habit, because otherwise you have to make sure that you don't that you remain physically healthy, right? And you need nutrition. And then so, and elsewhere and somewhere also Buddha talks about that, be moderate in food, and at the same time be positive. And you come across the statement in the Dhammapada, and you don't need that here. So that everything has to be moderate. So the Majjhima Patipada, or the middle path, is the moderate spiritual practice. Is moderate spiritual practice. So, any questions? In case you need me to explain anything else pertaining to my, my explanation, in case I miss something, in case you know anything about this, this how to say about this, the two extremes and the Majjhima Patipada, because when we during afternoon we will in our discussion on the Four Noble Truths, we would see what middle path is, right? Middle practice, the middle path is, because now, so that avoidance of two extremes is highly recommended. Remember, you can better understand this in terms of these two English Buddhist terms. I think you would remember these two. Let me type them in. So equanimity and indifference. Does anyone remember that we talked about this, equanimity and indifference, in our last class? And these two key terms also help us understand the moderate religious practice. Now, this moderate spiritual practice means not only meditation or your personal religious practice. It also includes your overall approach to existence, to your selfhood, to your life, and to the world, your surroundings as well. The way you emotionally or psychologically respond to life situations. And that is better, and that's part of this moderate spiritual practice. And you can easily understand that, more easily understand in light of these two terms, equanimity. Equanimity, which is upekha, is to always maintain a positive and warm relationship with the world, with yourself and the world. I mean, life situation. World at this point is understood in terms of situations, right? We always define the world in terms of situations that we come across, that we face. So it is the positive and warm connection or relationship with oneself and the world. And then, whereas indifference is the opposite of equanimity, opposite of upekha. It is indifference is to maintain a negative and cold distance from life situations. Because even I have come across both monastics and lay people, lay Buddhists, who are mistaken as to the fact that equanimity is way different than indifference. Now, I have come across some Buddhists who live in denial. Now, self-hating, they hate themselves, and they hate the world. For example, when they see, let's say, they are total vegetarians, and then when they see others eating meat, and they would despise that and say, well, you must be vegetarian and you are not supposed to eat meat. At that point, am I supposed to say that simply because I'm a vegetarian? No, I'm not. Why? Now, it's a different story. it's a different thing when it comes to whether eating meat is good or whether one should be vegetarian for life. Actually, Buddha didn't mandate that. When Devadatta asked, I think we did discuss that. When Devadatta asked the Buddha to declare that monks be vegetarian for life, forest dwellers for life, and then four things. And when it comes to about vegetarianism, Buddha said no, so that you may or may not eat meat, may or may not become vegetarian, because at times people, it's a different story that that's a different argument. Who makes sin? Who commits bad karma? Is it the meat vendor, the killer, or the slaughterer, the butcher, or the meat vendor, or the consumer? And that's a debate that's been ongoing for decades. That's a way outside, and we should not touch that. What's here is, and then what I'm going to say is that I'm a total vegetarian, right? And when I see you eating meat, being non-vegetarian, if I think about, okay, you know what, they don't have the ability to, they don't have the guts to become a vegetarian. I do. When I say that, I lose the value of my vegetarianism. Why? Then I get this conceit of mana. Conceit or mana, which is not good. Conceit is very different than pride. Pride has a positive connotation. Mana has a negative connotation. I become egoistic, and then I feel like ruling over non-vegetarians. At that point, even if I am a vegetarian, I am not a moderate spiritual practitioner at that point. So that's why. So that's how we understand moderate spiritual practice. So that you need to have a moderate approach to your own self. Like I said, I could live in denial. For example, let's say if I fail to achieve my meditation, I mean whatever the goal that I set, and if I get angry and curse myself, saying, you know what, I've been meditating for many years, still I can't control my mind. When I complain, when I go to that extent and complain, actually at that point I am already in one of the two extremes, self-mortification. At that point, I am torturing myself with my assumption, with my conclusion that I am a failure, that I have failed in my practice. Do you get that point? You know, it is, so the avoidance of self-indulgence or self-mortification is not only the actual religious practice. It also includes your overall approach to empirical existence and that of the world. So it is also your approach and attitude too. So in case, even if you believe and practice middle path, and at times you may fall into either extreme. For example, when you say that, you know what, I need to go back and then enjoy my life to the fullest extent, and one day I will come back. Of course, you have freedom to go back to worldly comfort. But in case you justify that by saying, well, I am already in practice, there's nothing wrong with totally leaving this practice and coming back. Of course, you have that freedom. But temporarily, you would fall into the extreme of self-indulgence. And then, so that in order to, whenever you are extremely ascetic, and it becomes an inner struggle, because I know some forest dwelling monks and monastics, and they have, how to say, let me plug this into my computer, it's low battery, almost dead. Okay. So then I know my own monastic friends who left their social life and went for forest dwelling. After spending few months, some came back a few months in having spent just a short period of time, and some would stay, some would come back having spent years in forest. And then when I asked, they would say always, meditation was their biggest struggle was that they were unable to control their emotions. They lost their self-control. Then I asked why. They said, well, when I was in the forest, when I was hungry and I was just consuming some wild fruit, or maybe some when some at times people would come to the hermitages, so and they would travel all the way to deep in the forest to offer food, and they will come back to village or community in search of food. And when they happen to eat some humble food, and at times, and they would remember their fond experience of eating good food. And at that point, at times it was simply hunger was the only factor that brought them back in the community. At times it was their lustful feelings or their sensual feelings overall, that would include hunger as well, that brought them back in the community. So that's why Buddha recommends strictly in a psychological sense, religious practice has to be moderate. And then it is more about managing your desires. And you are neither too much into indulgence, nor are you totally away from indulgence. Because when you are hungry, you have to eat. And then so that when you feel like taking a break, giving your body a break, you need to do that. And if you force yourself into meditating for extended hours, like overnight and few days, and so that that would make you go into a wrong conclusion, that so that Buddha's teaching isn't helping you. At that point, when in a practical sense, whenever you practice the middle path, whenever or wherever you feel uncomfortable, or at that point, you need to evaluate and revisit your the path that you have so far practiced, and maybe you may need to make some adjustments to your spiritual practice. That's some applied sense. Any questions? No, I guess, right? Okay. So, okay, thank you. So now, so far we have touched upon the cultural surroundings that prevailed during, during the advent of Buddhism. And then Tisarana, that is the three refuges. So that is the highest point of respect or worship or guidance in Buddhism. And then how Buddha rejected to be identified as a guru. And so that there was freedom for mutual questioning. And then always in a dialogue, listening has to be mutual. When it is, a dialogue is not a dialogue when one party only speaks and the other party only listens. Even if the other party or the listening party, except that the listening party doesn't have any question to ask, and they are simply learning. And then, so when it comes to two extremes, then it is not simply the standard religious extreme ascetic practice of self-mortification and extreme sensual indulgence as a way of emancipation. And then so that there's one Mahayana text, and so that how to say, Bodhicharya, Bodhicharya avatar. Bodhicharya is the practice of the Bodhisattva path. Charya is behavior, how a Bodhisattva walks the Bodhisattva path, and it explains, it's in Sanskrit, Bodhicharya avatar, and it gives an extensive, I mean, in-depth account of what self-mortification was, what Gautama as a Bodhisattva went through, how contemporary ascetics, ascetics of the contemporary with Siddhartha would practice. For example, the text explains that, and then you would stand on one foot for extended hours, and then so you would how to say, you would lie, you would light fire all around yourself, of course on the four sides, and then in the middle, I would say at noon, and then you would have your eyes fully open and keep looking at the sun, hot sun. Even if you get blinded by the hot sun, and you wouldn't still care. And that would be at the same time, and from above, you encounter extreme heat from the sun, and from around is the fire, so that emits extreme heat towards you. As a result, you just call, how to say, pancha tapa. Pancha is 5. So tapa is heat. Panchatapa, you torture your body with 5 heats. I mean, heat from 5 directions. Let's say if you lie on your back on the ground, you lie on the ground in the open air on your back, and while fire is burning a few feet away from your head, few feet away from your feet, and few feet away from your hands on 4 sides. At the same time, you keep your eyes fully open, and then keep looking at the sun, observe the sun, and you may get blinded, but you wouldn't care. Your motivation needs enlightenment. So this is one ample example of self-mortification. And then of self-indulgence, the other belief was that you would feed your physical body as much rich food as possible, anytime possible, and then thereby giving your body, and then you do, by so doing, you believe that you can make your body, physical body, get fed up with food, and at the same time you think lustful sensual feelings. You let your mind You make your mind, let your mind think and fill itself with as many lustful or sensual feelings as possible, so that the mind would somehow get fed up with those lustful or sensual feelings. And one day, your body and mind would come to a point at which your selfhood is totally fed up with so-called comfort. Now, that was the belief of self-indulgence. Siddhartha, as I said, Siddhartha never wanted to try that. And he never wanted to practice extreme religious asceticism, like ascetic practices like Panchatapa, the 5 heat practice. It's called the 5 heat practice, 5-fold. And then, so that would take you to denial. Of course, in a certain sutra, which I don't remember right now, and then Siddhartha says, towards the end of his 6 years of self-mortification, at times he would wake up in the middle of the night, and he was weak and fragile, and then he was still determined to get enlightened. And at the same time, in the middle of, as he woke up in the middle of the night, and then he would listen to wildlife approaching, and then so that how to say, wolves barking, lions roaring, tigers roaring, and then so that the elephants approaching and wildlife approaching and running around, and then for the moment, and he would get some fearful feelings as well. See how down to earth, how humble Buddha was. Now, in from a devotional approach, in devotional Buddhism, we hardly come across such a statement as allegedly made by the Buddha. But in the canon, in the sutras, and Buddha explains with his own words, his own wordings, how for the moment he felt some fear in the middle of the night as he woke up. And at times he would kind of feel disappointed, and he would find himself in despair, feeling like he's never going to make it. And later in the sutras, and Buddha would explain the same thing. And then when you practice the middle path, and he says, okay, make sure that you don't go into you don't live in denial. So that's the term that I want to explain. So when it comes, if you in moderate spiritual practice is such that you not only have a positive approach and warm positive connection or relationship with the world, you also avoid living in denial. Because I have come across lots of practitioners, including both lay and ordained, living in denial. And they are, while they are while they stick to that underlying motivation of enlightenment, at the same time, in their feelings, they are not having gut fear. So they are feeling like giving up. They feel like giving up on their spiritual quest. So that's about so the moderate spiritual practice. Any questions? We have 15 more minutes to go before your lunch, before our lunch. So anyone remember that the last time I explained the etymology of upekka? Upa plus ikha. Upa is close to, ikha is to see, inquire, and then or take a look. Take a close look. Get closer and see. That is called upekha. Upaikha. Ikha. And then Sanskrit word is upeksha. Again, it's upa plus S E Iksha. In Ikha, which is Pali, and Iksha, Sanskrit means take a look, to observe also, yes. Observe, to look at, to take a look, to see, to inquire, to observe, to discern. Now, to discern. Now, when it comes to discernment, discernment means to observation, thorough observation. And then, and Buddha explains two terms. Passionate discernment, and dispassionate discernment. So that passionate discernment corresponds to self-indulgence, because you are passionate about, you are very sensual. Dispassionate discernment is more like detachment. Instead of detachment, Buddha uses the word non-attachment. So, so that when you say passionate discernment, means you are totally sensual, and it could be a trap, because you may mistake, and then you wouldn't walk away from moderate to spiritual practice when you are passionate. And then at the same time, when you want to avoid the extreme of self-indulgence, and then and the self-mortification, in so doing, you have to see the fine line between being moderate and being in denial, because dispassionate discernment may land you in denial. So that's why Buddha rejected these both terms, passionate discernment and dispassionate discernment. When it comes to better term, it is better to be dispassionate than passionate. But again, you must see the fine line between detachment and non-attachment. So Buddhism doesn't use the word detachment. Why? Detachment as a standard Buddhist term, as an standard English Buddhist term, denotes how to say denial or indifference. Detachment corresponds to indifference. And then so that upekha or equanimity is in between. You eat when you are hungry, but you don't. And then having eaten, you don't cry or complain that the food wasn't good. If you do complain, meaning you are still thinking about the food, and you have problem with self-control. And then when you are hungry, of course, you need food. And then the deeper the hunger, and then so that you may complain more as in average nature. But what somehow you manage to satisfy your hunger, and so that at that point for the moment, in case you are still worried that the food wasn't good, and then that would be a hindrance to a moderate spiritual practice. The whole point here is the way you observe, is the way you manage your emotions, your tendencies, your mental tendencies, your emotional balance. In case you feel uncomfortable with regard to emotional balance, there's something wrong with your spiritual practice. So I don't want to touch the Four Noble Truths. That's why I just took some more time to explain things around moderate spiritual practice. So, any last questions? Oh, I think I didn't, by the time I mentioned the root of Buddha, I didn't still know how to, I couldn't still pull out the chat box. So, this is the root Buddha to wake up. And then Buddha is a past participle achieved position. So it comes from the root Buddha, to wake up. So Buddha is a past participle actually. So bodheti, to wake up, enlighten. Get awakened or awaken, awakening oneself. That's the meaning. And so that Buddha is an achieved position. It comes from the root birth. So once you are enlightened, that's another thing actually that I would like to take the last few minutes to explain that. Now, Buddha is not a given name. It's a position. So that's why going back to the story of Upaka, who asked Buddha what Buddha was, whether he was a god or Brahma or Yaksha or a human, to which he answered that he was neither a Brahma nor a god nor a Yaksha nor a human, and instead he called himself Buddha. At that point, he rejected to be identified as a personality. Of course, he is a personality. He had the persona, and he was an individual, and he wanted to emphasize that Buddha is a position. So that's why in English, early English writings, early English writers or the writers whosoever wrote in English explain, called Siddhartha the Buddha. When the Buddha was giving a sermon, going on alms rounds and talking to someone. But in modern day writings, the definite particle the is dropped, and you simply call him the Buddha. But still, I know some of my teachers, and they would still call him the Buddha. Then I asked why. That, you know, definite particle, the is used just to know, just to denote that's only one person or one reality. That's why the sun, the moon, but the Buddha, that's only one. But again, and that's why early writers, early English writers use the Buddha, but modern day you just simply call the Buddha, because Buddha has a personality, he has a persona. But doctrinally, we understand Buddha as not as an individual, but as a position. That's why when English we say, when you say, okay, when you be the Buddha one day, right? In case you want to be the all enlightened Buddha, that's how you explain. That's how I am. In case one of you are telling me that you want, that you are a Bodhisattva, that you want to be the all enlightened Buddha. And then, okay, then I would appreciate by saying this, okay, wow. Then when you become the Buddha one day, then I will come and learn from you. At that point, it is the same position that multiple people achieve. And then, so it is the same universal position as awakened, because truth cannot be more, because truth is one, and that is all about our self-realization. Selfhood is one. It's a different story that we define and understand our selfhood, ourself, my I amness, yourself, quote unquote, myself, quote unquote, based on our ethno-cultural, how to say, ethno-cultural background. And we also have a cultural, how to say, understanding, ethno-cultural understanding of ourselves. So the Asians understand themselves in a way that is very different than the Caucasians or Westerners understand. That is necessarily ethno-cultural. Whereas when it comes to in the doctrinal sense, it is the same selfhood. Selfhood is universal. Human condition is the same. There's no difference. So that, because human condition is the same regardless of the surrounding culture, ethno-cultural background, it is the same human condition. So the selfhood is same, sensual needs are same, it is the same anger, so that it is the same universal need for walking away from agony, despair, sufferings, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and so that you would attain nirvana. But again, if there are 20 individuals of us, there are 20, maybe 19, 20 individuals of us here in a dialogue. And then, so that we come from different backgrounds and ethno-cultural background, but our tendencies, mental tendencies, emotions, they are basic tendencies are the same according to 52 tendencies, according to Buddhist Abhidharma psychology. But the way we express our needs, the way we want to satisfy our needs could be different based on our prior experience, our genes, our background. And so that the needs are universal, tendencies are universal. So the nirvana that we achieve is the same thing, but it is common, but it is the same nirvana that we understand, but we have our own nirvana. There's no one place that we get to, like go to McDonald's or Starbucks and then having a chat, looking at that place as a domain of nirvana. There's no such thing. Okay. So it's 11:30. So let's meet at 1:30, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then see you at 1:30.
All right. If everybody could take one.